It's wild how disconnected we have become.
On an all-new intentional living.
If we as women are overwhelmed, overworked, disconnected, and more medicated than ever in human history, maybe something's not working.
Alison Canavan returns with conviction.
We have got to stop outsourcing our power.
Inviting us to have the hard conversations.
I like to ask questions, and questions make people uncomfortable, especially when they're in a position of authority.
Remember our intuition.
We are taught to ignore that subtle voice for truth, and we have to come back.
And finally, take back our power.
Not that we don't have it, is we choose not to use it.
You can absolutely turn the ship around. There's a different way to be, do, and live.
On an all-new intentional living with Courtney Meyers. Hey, while I've got you here, I've got a question. Are you in optimal health? Well, if you're anything like me, I'm sure you're just as confused and overwhelmed with all the information, rules, and advice out there for living your best life. And to make matters worse, you don't know where to turn to get some clarity.
We have to ask ourselves, why is that happening?
But lucky for you, I've got someone that can help.
I made it a part of my mission. Well, I'm going to learn everything I can about health, happiness, and healing and thriving, and what that means to be an optimal human. And I'm going to just scream it from the rooftops.
My friend Samantha Lotus has got a new course that will break down everything you need to know to optimize your life and get your health journey back on track.
We have to move away from these rigid structures of like, you have to be this way and you have to do this way and you have to eat this and you have to follow this. And like, I don't think that's where it's at.
I know this because she has personally helped me wean off unnecessary medication. She's created a wellness kit for me so that I can optimize my own personal health goals. And she's opened my awareness to the work-life health connection.
That's where it starts.
She's so good at what she does. I know you'll be racing to sign up for her course. Just take a listen to her on episode 99 of Intentional Living, and you won't want to wait.
It's about finding what works for us and being in the trial and error and allowing it to be messy and imperfect and having a lot of grace and compassion with the journey.
Check out Optimum by Samantha Lotus. It's linked below. And if you use my special code, Courtney, you'll get $100 off the course.
It is that balance, and it's finding the right equation for you.
Don't miss out. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now. Hi, Alison. Welcome back to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. This is such a special episode for many reasons for me today, because you have been such, for lack of a better word, an angel, and you have an angel right behind you, in my life. I mean, from the moment we met, I knew that we were going to have a relationship. I remember sitting at my daughter's dance recital or dance practice, working on our episode. And I had like this feeling, and I've never done it with any of my guests, like, I have to email you. We have to do something more. And since that moment that we met and had you on the show the first time, we've stayed in contact. We've both been through a lot. And I can't thank the world enough for you and what you've been in my life. And we're going to get into it because you even came back in full force when I went, like, without even knowing that I was going through such big things in my life. You were like the angel, like, that needed to come in and help me, guide me through it all. So I am so excited to have this conversation today. Have you here to kick off season 3. As everyone knows, we've been on hiatus for like the last 4 months. And I couldn't have, had a better person come on the show, and a friend. You've become such a friend. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm receiving that. That's what I'm working on, receiving. So thank you so much. I receive that in my heart, in every cell of my body. I'm so thrilled to be kicking off season 3. And it's funny you say that, because I remember when we had our conversation and I got off the phone, I was like, yeah, no, we're going to be in each other's lives. You just know with certain people, there's an energy, there's a click, there's a recognition, right? There's a remembrance that happens where you're like, wow, yeah, there's just something special with this person. So I am so thrilled to see you looking so amazing.
Thank you.
To be back doing season 3. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, that alignment, I mean, it's something that we can't even describe, and people can come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. I think you are a season, a reason, and a lifetime in my life. I think you've hit all the marks, but that energetic pull, I know before we even jumped on here and we were catching up, we were talking about that, like how the energy just meshes or not. And then you feel that, like, so if anyone is wondering what went down and why I took the hiatus, go back and listen to the previous episode. I describe it all, but we're obviously going to talk about it today. Over the summer, I got hit with some really big health scares, and it was just kind of like mind blowing. My life kind of came to a stop, which all this. And randomly within like a week of me getting that news that I have an 8.6 centimeter mass on my liver, huge, a 3 centimeter lesion on my kidney. My body was so swollen that after finally getting a diuretic, I lost 7 pounds in 4 days. That's how much water weight. I had my wedding ring cut off because it was so swollen. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't get off the floor. Like, what the hell was going on with me? I started getting test results back. And as you know, you texted me literally the day I got the news. And it was like divine timing, divine intervention. If you don't believe in this stuff, like that was just the example, like this is it. And you were texting me about something totally unrelated. And you said, how are you? And I just unloaded to you. Immediately we were on the phone and you took my health journey to a next level. I can't think of anything other than the fact that God, divine source, whatever you want to call it, sent you in my path to help me through that. And I can't thank you enough because, out of anyone, you were constantly checking in on me, giving me advice, sending me to other healers. We'll talk about, the Delta healing, which is fabulous. I want to talk about your parasite cleanse, everything you did and everything you were guiding me through. But I can't thank you enough. And it's just like we are brought into each other's lives for reasons. Yeah. And we have obviously been talking before that, hopping on here and there, and we hadn't talked in a couple months. And like something in you made you reach out to me in that moment. And like, what is that? Like, it's so cool when we can actually realize that. Like, thank God everything in me is like, benign, we're good. Although no one mentioned what the Delta healer, and I want to talk about him too, saw in me that he actually says that I have cancer in my left kidney. No one saw that. They've always been focusing on my right kidney. So, it's to be seen. I'm doing the energy work to heal that regardless. But, from the medical standpoint, I'm all good, except for I have like a gluten intolerance or celiac. So aside from that, I could deal with that over cancer any day. But like,
and let me just say that when most people when you say, it's really interesting how this happens. And we start saying, gosh, I was thinking about someone and they called. Yeah. Or I had this feeling that when I turned this corner, this would happen. And this is a part of ourselves. It's who we are. We are spirit. Yeah. Like, it's who we are. Like, we identify so heavily with this body. And we put so much, emphasis on the body and on the physical, but actually what we are is spiritual, because we're infinite beings that this is just a temporary vehicle. And so, I believe that spirit works through us in different ways. It might be an idea that we get in our head, or it might be, I always say to people, when you have a thought that's reoccurring saying, you should check in on this person or text this person, or you're walking down the road and someone pops into your mind, they're popping into your mind for a reason. And so then it's like, do I take action on those kind of thoughts? Well, a lot of us are so disconnected, right? That we're just like, we let all these thoughts come and go. And then we say things like, God, I'm just so unsupported. And I'm like, no, you're not. You are fully supported by the universe. And the universe is constantly bringing you signs and symbols and ideas and thoughts, but you're not recognizing them as support. And it's like I said to my client the other day, you could say, I always make up different random simple stories to make a point, like I would love a sign to know, whether to go ahead with this business or not. Like, I'm just making this up. This is not even what I said to her. And then you go into a cafe and you meet a girl and she starts talking about the kind of business and maybe was like, gives you an idea for a name, just a random conversation. And then you're driving down the street and you're looking at a billboard and it actually has the perfect name. Or, you go online and you see this perfect thing that matches. And then you sit down and you're doing your prayers or whatever. And you say, God, just send me a sign. And spirit's like, We have sent you like 15 different signs today. We put like 5 different people on your path, and you're not recognizing it as a sign. So I always say, like, we have to be open to the awareness of the answers coming to us from a myriad of different ways. But for me, I believe through all the years of doing this work, that this work is spiritually first. I really do think it is. And I don't have a problem with allopathic medicine. I think everything has its place.
Yeah.
But I don't think like all the emphasis should be put on one thing, because right now what I'm experiencing in this world, so many women, Courtney, presenting to doctors and having blood tests. And I'm in perimenopause as well. And I hear this from women all the time. Your bloods are normal. This is normal. They're like, my bloods are normal. I'm exhausted. I can't get out of bed. My hair sucks. I'm putting on loads of weight. You've all of these symptoms, and then you're gaslighted, right? And then you're kind of like, my gosh, like my whole body's changing. I don't feel good. I don't feel good myself. I don't feel myself anymore. Yet I go and I have these tests and I'm being told they're normal. And I always say to people, I'm a questioner. I ask questions about everything, which I know deeply irritates some people around me. Like, I ask questions about absolutely everything. Why? Why would that be that? What makes the bloods normal? How do you distinguish what normal is? Well, normal is actually based on, the general population. And if you were to look at the general population right now, and they're taking the normal range from that, you can bet your ass I do not want to be in the normal range. That's what I know for sure. Like, these are questions that people don't ask. Like, I want to know what you're basing this on. Where do you get these numbers from? How do you do it? Plus, for us as women, we have 4 different stages of our cycle each month. So when you get your bloods taken, you want to be sure you're with someone who understands the different cycles that women go through, and that your hormones go up and go down at different cycles. And they're not just taking a reading on that as if that's your reading. And, also men and women are so different.
Yes.
So different. Yes. And a lot of these tests are we're all lumped into one category. Like, men don't menstruate. Men don't.
Well, that's a question for some people. Some people believe they do.
Yeah, no, they don't.
That's a whole other
And I'm just gonna clear up that mental health
does not happen.
No. And when we start blurring the boundaries, we start getting confused. I always say confusion is the first sign of abuse. So if you're confused, start looking for the source of abuse. That's what I always say. Where am I being fed all this misinformation? Because there's no reason for us to be confused. None of this needs to be confusing. Like, God created us perfectly, right? So, when we're looking at our bodies, we can't lump men and women in the same category. And especially that we are cyclical beings as women. Like, in Ireland, we would say that our bleed is our winter. And then we go into our spring and our summer and our autumn. And I know they call it like the menstrual, the luteal, the follicular in the medical terms. But if you take care of yourself in your spring and your summer, you should have no problems in your autumn and your winter. And it was my sister Laura that kept saying this to me. And she was getting me to keep a journal. This beautiful woman in Ireland creates all these journals where you can track and goes into each from a seasonal perspective. So not only do we as women go through the 4 seasons each cycle, but then as human beings, we have to look at how we can move with the seasons in real life. Like, that's what we're meant to be doing. We're rhythmic beings. We're meant to be moving with the rhythm, the rhythm that the world is moving with, and then getting in and tapping into the rhythm within ourselves. When I was super young, I got cut off from my cycle. Like, I had very heavy periods. I was in horrendous pain right, missed days of school, and then got taken to the doctor and got put on a pill for that. Then I developed really bad side effects and acne from the pill, I now realize. And then they put me on, Roaccutane and other stuff for that. Then I had side effects of that, and I got put on an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety. So now I know for sure, I can see the trajectory of my mental health. I can see the trajectory of my physical health. And so for 20 years, while I was on and off the pill, I was essentially cut off from my female cycle, right? Because it was like synthetic hormones. Now, some people can take the pill and have absolutely no problem with it. And this is what I say about all medication. When we're talking about medication, we can't have an everything for everyone and an all. It doesn't work that way. I always had a horrendous response to the pill. Like I immediately sunk into a dark depression. And so the answer to that was take me off that pill, put me on another one, take me off that, put me on another. Like it was never, maybe we should get in tune with our body. Maybe we should listen to our cycle. Maybe our cycle is there for a reason. Maybe I should get to know myself. Maybe we should teach girls about their cycle, and like women, that when they're in their bleed, it's actually a time of introspection, and we should be getting quiet, and the veil is thinner and we're more connected to ourselves and to spirit. And it's a really sacred time. And as women, we're not meant to be going gung-ho 24/7, go, 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 go. Mm-hmm. Equally for the 4, weeks out of the month. And since it's made me really sad, because I kind of mourned this lifetime of being disconnected from myself as a woman and almost punishing my body, Courtney, for doing what it wants to do, which I find really sad. Mm-hmm. I find that really, really sad as a woman. And now I'm 46, going through perimenopause, like feeling like an absolute lunatic for a couple of days a month. That's why I started to ask these questions and doing all the research. And once I started sitting and listening to myself, like now during my bleed, I don't push myself. I actually, if I feel I need a rest, or I go to bed early, or like I don't schedule heavy things in during that time. Like, during your spring and your summer is the time to do more cardio and get out there and do that kind of work. The kind of foods that we eat should be different throughout the different phases. Like it's wild how disconnected we have become.
Well, I mean, if I've been looking for a sign, it's so funny what you're talking about. Like, we look for the signs. We want the signs. We want the signs. I love this meme. It circles around, online all the time. Like, just give me a sign. Well, give me a signier sign. Give me an even signier sign. I'll wait for the next sign because I need to give a more signier sign. And it's like we do that and we don't listen to ourselves. And exactly what you're saying is this summer, amidst all this health stuff, I have now weaned myself off of the pill. I have weaned myself off of my sertraline, my Zoloft, because I'm like, these are causing me problems. I don't know if it was my medical health, my health issues were caused by them or not. I'm not saying that, but in general, like it was this constant feeling that like my hormones are off, something's off. Like I don't like this idea of putting synthetic things into our system. I have been on Zoloft for probably 10 years at least. Like that is numbing me. That is taking away that creativity. Super low dose. Did it help me through a moment in time? And I think it was great. And I'm not saying don't take medication, talk to your doctors, do what you need to do, but question it. Is it a Band-Aid? Great. I've talked to so many people on the show, so many experts in this area, and it's great to help you through something, but taking a pill to me or any sort of prescribed medication like that should never be a lifetime prescription.
I don't think any of these medications, I mean, like, listen, we have to question the intentions behind the people making money, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of these medications like were meant to be permanent parts of our life.
But but we've allowed them to be. I mean, I went on the pill, in high school because fear mongering, like you got to go on the pill. You don't want to get pregnant. You don't want to get pregnant. Let's maybe learn about
I got pregnant on the pill. So let's have that conversation. And actually, since I was saying that because Elisa Vitti, who has the MyFlow app, she was saying something. She's amazing, by the way, for anyone who wants to go on and track their cycle. She is somebody who's done it really, really well.
Okay.
And she's so knowledgeable and has done so much research and everything. And she says, and, we also need to look at the pill doesn't, prevent us from getting pregnant 100% of the time. And I was like, well, like we're told it does. Like we're not told that there's lots of different things that interfere with that. Like I took mine religiously at the same time every day. But I only said this last week after listening to her being interviewed on a podcast. And I was saying to my friend, God, she's the first person that I've ever heard. Even she said it really quickly in passing, but because it was something that I experienced, I heard it. Yeah. And I said to my friend, and my friend goes, oh, I got pregnant on the pill. And then I said it to another girl the other day. She goes, oh, I got pregnant on the pill too. I'm like, okay, so this is something I've never heard. Like I've always been like mystified by the fact that I was taking this pill every single day and I got pregnant. And I really was beating up on myself and made myself feel so bad. I felt so guilty. I was like, where did I miss it? What did I miss? And the fact of the matter is that we don't have the research on foods, chemicals, lifestyle. I know that I tried to track everything, and I went to the dentist and I had a filling, and they said that, the medication they put me on for that could have interfered with it. But I was like in this cycle of beating myself up so badly and trying to find what I did wrong. When the fact of the matter is, we don't have all this research. We don't know if this one pill suits everyone the same way. We don't know how everybody's body is going to respond to something. We're so complex as biological beings. There's so much going on. Just think about your body, the heart that beats, the lungs that breathe, this incredibly complex digestive system. And never mind all the hormones that are going on, your blood circulating, having to get adequate sleep. Then we have to all our vitamins and minerals and micronutrients. I mean, come on. Even if you were the best scientist in the world and you were doing research, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's why when I was studying nutrition for years and we were going through all the research papers, one of the questions I kept asking was, I get that you're doing this research and you're checking on, vitamin D and its efficacy, or vitamin C, but you don't know what those people are doing when they go home. You don't know if they're in a relationship or if they're really stressed. One person could be eating really well. One person could not be eating well. Is one person getting daylight and one person not? There's so many variables, and we're not allowed to ask questions today. And I don't have answers, and I certainly don't know very much, even after all my years of study. But what I do know is that I like to ask questions, and questions make people uncomfortable, especially when they're in a position of authority. When you ask questions to people who are in a position of power or a position of authority, they get angry, they get mad, you get gassed, you get cancelled in today's world, for asking questions. And I think there's a revolution here. And what I love about your journey is the day I spoke to you was also the willingness, Courtney, and the readiness to see things. There was something inside of you that had been there for so long saying something's off. And that's the voice as women that we are taught to ignore. That's the danger. We are taught to ignore that subtle voice for truth, that voice of wisdom, that voice for truth that's knocking on our door every day. And then we go and we present and we say something to the experts and we get upset, or we get told we're insane, or we get stop. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been in a doctor's office with stop, almost I remember when James was young and he stopped breathing, and the doctor in the hospital was raised your eyes to heaven. It was first time moms, so dramatic. Excuse me, my son nearly died.
Yeah.
And you're literally gaslighting me and saying, first time moms, they're so dramatic. No, your baby being blue and floppy and not breathing is dramatic.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
You're right though. Because when we started talking about my health journey and my health issues, when this all happened, remember when I said to you, I was like, I've been feeling the need to make these changes. I've been feeling the need to go off the pill. I've been feeling the need to be off of this. I've been scared because everyone says you can't do that. And so, even I told you, I've been feeling the need to change my diet. I knew that I wanted to change these things, but then it was oh, bam, I'm faced with this huge medical issue. We need to deal with this head on. And of course, you introduced me to Dr. Rashura, which was amazing. And that gave me a lot of insight. And look up Delta Healing, everyone. It's fascinating. Your friend Michelle, the documentary blew my mind. But at the same time, I started to okay, we need to combine this holistic approach, a spiritual approach, which I was so open to hearing and understanding and feeling. And you really held my hand through that. But then I also wanted to get the Western medicine opinion. And, I talk all about I don't always believe in what's going on with Western medicine. I do believe that we're missing something here. And like you said, I know multiple people that have gotten pregnant off, while on the pill. I was actually just talking to my hairdresser the other day, and she was saying, now there's this whole thing with Ozempic babies. People are taking the quick fix, taking the pill to get skinny, and it's blocking their birth control because it's keeping it in their stomach and not going into their digestive system. And now all these babies are coming because of Ozempic, and you can't have it while you're pregnant. And there's the opposite effect. So yeah, we will just believe the quick fix. We will believe the doctors. We will believe what they have to say. Oh my goodness.
Take a moment for that.
Yeah.
Like that's because I was put on Roaccutane when I was young, and you're not allowed for acne, by the way, in case anybody thinks what it is. That should be taken off the market because it has been proven to cause suicidal tendencies. And anybody who argues with me over that, I have fell down rabbit. I've read research papers. They have been like, it is a horrific drug to give to anyone. When let me tell you, what really should have been done with me at that time was education about my hormones. But this is the problem. The doctors don't have the education, so they can't pass it on. The doctors don't do nutrition training. The doctors don't understand food like helps your body. But when you said there, and I just want to take a pause for this, you said that I know, we always know.
Yes.
We actually always know. Like so many women who work with me say, I just don't know. And I'm like, and I'm going to say to you that you do.
Yeah.
It's just that what you know is different to what you've been told. And you're afraid to let that knowing come through because we're so afraid of disagreeing with people today. We're so afraid of disagreeing with someone when we go to see them. Like how I see them, like, yes, you go and you study to be a doctor, and I think that's amazing and everything, if that's your path. But your role surely should be, and I can't tell you how many doctor's offices I went into and said, not doing well on this medication. I feel like I can't feel my emotions at all. I also remember with my medication after James, I said to her, I feel like my reaction's very slow. Like when you call me, like there's a large gap. And I'm not aware of that. It's just been said to me, like you say, Alison, and be like, yeah. Now, I have a baby. I'm driving with that baby in the car. That's probably not a good idea for my reactions to be slow like that. And she just said to me, well, no, you're only on this, and we have a plan for you to bring you up to and then we're going to wean you off. And I'm saying to her, I'm telling you that I'm not loving the side effects, that I kind of feel it's dangerous. Surely at that stage, their job should be, well, let's maybe try and wean you off and see if we can get you support and help and therapy. And let's see if that works. Like, what's wrong with that? Because you know what? That way of thinking and that way of doing things takes investment, love, and time. Right? Yeah. And so there are a lot of the things that people just don't have today. So like anybody that thinks that doing the work on themselves is a quick fix is insane. Like you're in another planet. Like I have seen people recover, come off all sorts of medication, come through. Like it's incredible what I've seen. But if you want it, you will get there. And Kelly Brogan is the one that I would say is my absolute hero in this space. Like when she wrote the book, A Mind of Your Own, her first book, it opened my eyes. She literally spent her entire career in New York when she had her practice solely taking women off medication. That's what she did, and helping them wean off medication. And she, in my humble opinion, is the world's foremost teacher in this space. And she is absolutely an incredible light and voice for women who really want to step into their power and step away from this, idea that you're broken and you need to be fixed. Like as women, we have got to step away from that. What if we're not broken and need to be fixed? What if we are doing way too much? Like, we're breastfeeding, we're pregnant, we're also working, we're paying the bills, we're rearing toddlers, we're keeping businesses going. And, what if it's just too much? Why can't we have this conversation? Is it because we feel bad because this is what as women we thought we wanted for so long? And then maybe we're like, maybe I don't want all of that. And again, I'm not generalizing everybody because I think our paths are so individual. But I do think it's worth having the conversation of if we as women are overwhelmed, overworked, disconnected, and more medicated than ever in human history, maybe something's not working. Like maybe we need to have that conversation. Maybe something's not working. And I know I've been a single mom for 13 years and I run my own business. We're not meant to do it on our own. And I'm saying that as a single mom. So single moms listening to me are going, oh, I'm doing it and I'm amazing. It has been, I absolutely love my son. It has been the most amazing journey to be his mother. But would it have been lovely to have a really supportive partner and family near me where oh my God, you bet your ass it would have been. Would it have been amazing to have a really solid connected community? You bet your ass it would have been, because in the last few years, I have accepted help for the first time in my life. Like that's part of me opening up to my divine feminine energy and relaxing a little bit and really doing the other half of the work. Like I have been in my dominant masculine energy because I was so afraid of people to see that I was weak and I couldn't do it. I mean, James was born. I was like, I felt so guilty about being a single mom and going back and living with my mom after having a successful modeling career, and had this deep innate fear of being judged that when somebody offered me help, I took it as an attack. Oh, so you think I can't do it by myself? So what happened in that case was I spiraled into a very deep, dark postpartum depression. Of course I did. We're not meant to do it on our own. We're not meant to live in a world where we can't accept help. And so many women I work with are like, I feel bad when people offer me help. I don't want to feel weak. I don't want to be perceived as not being able to do it all. Why do we think any human being is meant to do it all? Why? Where did that come from? Did it come from feminism? Did the intention behind feminism go awry somewhere? Like these are conversations I think we need to have.
I think we were sold a load of shit. I think people said we can have it all. And I've talked about this before. We can't. We can't. I have an extremely supportive husband that is extremely involved with our children. And I'm still doing too much. I mean, when this all started, when they started running all these tests on me, I found out that I had a recent bout of mono. Like I was pushing through. I didn't know. I'm just exhausted. That's the way it is. I mean, we put our power in other things and then we just push through it. I mean, all the doctors I've worked with, I know for a fact, and there's nothing to prove it, that on my liver, that mass is probably because I went to a nutritionist in my 20s and took HCG shots, which are now banned because authorities said it was okay. And I listened to my mom because my mom did it. And did I lose weight at the time? Of course. But we go into these societal constructs. We just believe everything we're told. Thank God. I'm not even going to say I don't know how. I know how because I'm being looked after and it was put in my path. The doctor I found to deal with my liver is a GI doctor who believes in food as medicine. He took over an hour in my first consult. He took the weekend to call me and assure me that I was going to be okay. He spent the time. When you say that we don't have time, love, patience, it's not that we don't have it. It's we choose not to use it. He was very much like, we don't need you to be on these medicines. Now, this is a Western medicine doctor. And the minute I met him, I was like, thank you. Like now I can start to bridge.
And let me ask you, just in that moment, how did it feel for you?
So
seen, heard,
liberated. And it felt so good. And it was just kind of like, what is this birth control contributing? So, we're just given these things and just, I mean, I've talked about this before. I had a couple panic attacks in the last year. And I was just getting my Zoloft or sertraline through like the mail-in pharmacy because it's easy. It's money. They're going to make this easy for you to get. And I reached out after the first one because I never had it. And the effects were so bad that I said, do I need to talk to someone? Because I'm not seeing my therapist anymore. And their response to me was, do you want to up your dose? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
I mean, can we have a moment for the legalized drug dealers? Like, I think it's really interesting that people have this, oh my God, they're on drugs. And yet they're on like 5 or 6 different medications prescribed by the doctor, right? Like even when we look at Matthew Perry, it just came out that, there was a woman with a medical license who was dealing ketamine, basically. What makes her any different from a drug dealer on the street? Again, we need to have these conversations, whether you agree with me or not. One of the things that we've moved away from in the world is being able to have discussions.
Yes. Oh.
We in school, we actually learned to debate. I used to love it. I was on the debate team. We used to debate things and we'd be given a topic as kids and we had to debate the opposite. Even if we didn't believe it, we had to, it's a very interesting concept, right? You'd be able to go into it so deeply that you'd almost make yourself believe it at the end, right? Because that was the team. Yeah, that's what we do. And that's what we do as a human being as well. And we have to start understanding that, you say you had 2 anxiety attacks. And this is the aha moment I had as well. And I'm like, up the dose. Well, hold on a second. Let's have the conversation of, if the medication was working, I wouldn't be having anxiety attacks because that's what the medication's for, right? Like, hold on a second. I'm on medication that's supposed to prevent me from having anxiety attacks, yet my anxiety attacks are getting worse and we're not putting two and two together. I think that's fascinating. That for me, like we used to take, I was listening to my friend's podcast. He's in recovery, called This Is Powerful. It's brand new. If anybody's in recovery, it's awesome. He's in the UK. And he was interviewing a girl, Michelle, and she talked about, which is something that I had an aha moment about myself, like taking ephedrine when she was young in the gym. And I was like, oh my God, everybody was taking ephedrine. Like, that's speed for anyone listening.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, no wonder my nervous system was shot. No wonder, like, anxiety, like all the years of 16 hour life, like, it all makes perfect sense. Like, my hormones were out of balance. I was cut off from my cycle. I was taking ephedrine so I could go longer in the gym as a young girl. And then she actually said in this podcast that she ended up having a heart issue because of it, like a really serious heart issue because of it. We don't go back and connect the dots. And I have done so much work in my recovery. I'm a decade nearly free of alcohol and drugs. But I'm thinking, oh my God, even in my 12 steps that I did and everything years ago, I never went back and even thought about the ephedrine. She reminded me, like, how many other things was I given? Did I take? Did I buy? That I'm not connecting to all the problems I have been doing my best to heal the last few years. Like, as someone who's 10 years in recovery, I am still mopping up the mess of using and being in an active addiction for so long. That's the reality of it. A decade later, I'm still seeing all these symptoms that are 100% from alcohol use. Mm-hmm. Alcohol use wipes out your gut lining. Mm-hmm. It causes chronic dysregulation in your system. It is a really potent toxin. It messes with your brain chemistry because it induces GABA, which is that sense of relaxation. But then afterwards, it has the opposite effect and you get anxiety. Like, the more I've researched this, the more I'm like, oh my God, I didn't stand a freaking chance.
Yeah.
I poured symptom. And then I'm trying to chase a bit of calm with wine, with a glass of wine in the evening, because I'm so dysregulated, so overwhelmed on these medications that are supposed to be making me feel better. Yeah. And then during those years, the only thing that would take the edge off is a glass of wine. Yeah. And it worked. By the way, we need to have this conversation as well. It worked and works temporarily. It works until it doesn't, because like everything, we build up a tolerance. So I needed more wine to have the calming effect. But then the anxiety and the fear and the horrificness in my mind and body the next day was getting worse and worse and worse with age, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you start to map this and put it all together, it's like, oh my gosh, what if we trusted that our bodies are innately powerful and always want to be in a state of healing and are always trying to make its way home to balance and homeostasis? And what if we reframed how we look at this, and instead of sustaining ourselves energetically externally, and I mean with sugar and coffee and everything else, and even, well, a lot of us are energetically sustained from external things, which means our inner energetics get lazy. Like, if you don't go to the gym and use your muscles, they're going to, not be toned, right? So you have to go and you have to work. The same with your inner energetics, the same with your inner, connecting to your intuition. Like, some people say to me, I don't have intuition. And I'm like, no, you just have stopped listening to it. And you build up layers of protection. But if you start working from the inside out and you start supporting yourself on every level, meditation, mindfulness, getting into nature, eating the right foods, your energetics from inside you will start to wake up, and you'll start to be able to sustain yourself with your own life force instead of an external synthetic life force. Why would a whole system inside of you even bother to wake up when it's just being fed with all of this stuff from the outside all the time? It doesn't need to.
It doesn't need to. And our bodies are built to conserve and survive. So they're going to conserve as much energy as they can. I literally was just listening to a biohacking podcast about this. And it's just like, our hormones are off. Our bodies aren't working because we aren't putting them in an environment to work. Our minerals are depleted. Like, when you talk about hormones and your levels, like, I've had a lot of tests done, especially lately. I've had a lot of blood work done. I had blood work done when I was pregnant with my son. They thought I might have a thyroid issue. Dr. Rashura, or the Delta healer, he told me that I have or autoimmune thyroiditis, which is essentially Hashimoto's. That has not shown up on any of my panels. Now I'm about to ask one of my holistic doctor friends to run some more panels for me. I need to run my sex hormone panel and do an advanced thyroid panel, because these things are causing us not to perform at our optimal self. And I've felt this for a long time, that something was wrong with my thyroid. I went to a doctor in my 20s, and I've gained weight now since having kids as I'm older. I am crediting that to my hormones are freaking out of whack. But when I went in my 20s, I wanted to lose weight, I was doing 2 spin classes a day. I was eating like a 1,200 or less calorie diet. I was shooting myself up with HCG, like doing all this. And actually, I look back at pictures, I'm like, I look freaking good. Like, what was my problem? But society was telling me,
oh my gosh. Anyway, listening to this,
so frustrated.
Like we look back on pictures and we go, what was I thinking? Let's have a moment, and this is an important thing for everyone to hear. That's because we have a distortion of the mind. Our mind distorts things. Like I teach my clients, like, all the work is and I don't mean the mind and the brain. The mind is bigger than the mind and the brain, right? Like I'm talking about the mind that creates everything. Most of us have a distorted mind. Like when we see something, we interpret it, we make up random wild stories. Like I coach all my clients in story. I'm like, you're making up a story. Are you making up a story? Like you see someone, you're not in great form and you're in a cafe and a girl walks in that and you believe that she's seen you. And so you're sitting at the table and you're like, oh my God, like she totally ignored me. And then somebody else comes in and you're like, that girl that we met a few weeks ago and sat at lunch with, you say to your friend, totally ignored me. I can't believe how rude she was. We do this kind of stuff all the time, by the way. Yeah. And then you tell 3 other people, and then you meet the girl at an event or something a few weeks later. And she comes over and she's like, somebody just said to me that you were in a cafe, and they say, do you know something? Something had just happened to my child that day. I hadn't eaten all day. I ran into that cafe and I grabbed myself something to eat. She was like, I promise you, I did not see you. I was literally having the worst day of my life. Yeah. We do that all the time. We do it all the time. We make up shit about everything that's happening. I'm telling you now, we are making it up. And if you want to liberate yourself from this, start working with your mind. Start becoming aware of the thoughts that you're holding about others, about yourself, and start challenging yourself and saying, am I making this up? Is this actually happening, or am I making this up? Do I look at somebody and make up a story because I'm uncomfortable? Do I meet somebody that doesn't maybe connect energetically with me, and do I make up a story about them to justify that energetic connection? We have to become responsible at this level, because we're the ones creating all of this with the mind. And that is where this work is. The mind also creates everything that we're feeling in the body, right? Which is really important. And we work with the mind by connecting spiritually. There's no other way to do this. We're so afraid to have the spiritual conversation today. I'm not. Mind, body, spirit. It's like a 3-legged stool. If you're pretending that a part of you doesn't exist, what is your breath? Your breath is your spirit moving through you. They're saying, oh, I'm not spiritual and I don't. Well, I'm like, your breath is your essence of your life. It's spirit moving through you. Like that. What leaves us when we die, when we transition, when we cross over? It's our breath. It's our spirit that leaves our body. So whenever you want to connect that spirit to, it's an essential part of you that's why as a breathwork teacher, I help people transform their lives through the power of breath. Through deep transformational breathing, you can go in and transform really deep emotions, and also get deeply, deeply connected to yourself by slowing your breath down, by taking a conscious breath, by listening to your breath, by watching where it goes in the body. But we have got to stop outsourcing our power. And I don't care who's giving it to. And I mean as well to for years, I gave it to mediums and tarot healers and tarot card readers. And it's like, somebody tell me what's going to happen.
Yes, me too.
Somebody tell me.
Yes.
So it went from the modeling and the constant chaos and that. And I really hear you when you're saying doing all the cardio, restricting myself to 1,200 calories, injecting myself. look at what you're setting yourself up for. Like your body under so much pressure. And then you wonder where the anxiety comes from. There's your answer. That's where the anxiety was born. It was born from a nervous system that was completely shot. It's like putting a plug in and blowing all the electrical circuits. That's what's happening in those years. Yeah. And so then we're like mystified when we get into our 30s and 40s, why we have all these symptoms. And I'm like, oh, go back into your teens and 20s and look at how you were treating yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can take it all the way back to my childhood. I mean, I literally have albums out because I was looking for something the other day and we're showing my daughter. Like, it's funny. In the closet over here, I have one of my pageant dresses. So you want to talk about putting yourself in judgment and the stories that you took from 3 years old on up until high school, beauty pageants, cheerleading, dance performances, competitive dance. Talk about putting yourself on a stage and being judged by how you look and how you perform. That was my life. I mean, I modeled as a child. I have all these things and I was showing my daughter some of this. So I had this dress my mom brought to me that was like, she's like, it's the most she had ever spent on an outfit, like up until like her whole life at that point when she bought it for me. It was, I think I was probably about my daughter's age, probably around 5 years old. And it was this hand sewn like pageant dress, very JonBenet Ramsey. It's beautiful. Like they had my colors done so they can get the right shades. It has like little hand pearls. I mean, it is like a princess dress, like to die for a little kid. So my mom brought it thinking my daughter would love it. The energy that dress freaking holds, she won't touch it. She puts it in the back of the closet. She will not put it on. Doesn't matter how many pictures she sees of me in it. So like you wonder where this comes from. We can take it all the way back to the stories I was probably telling myself as a child. I didn't even realize I was telling myself. But then, and even to go into like, so you get into your 20s and I'm doing all this stuff so I can perform. I'm in Hollywood. I'm on set. I'm working with people that are beautiful and that everyone looks up to. And I have to have that standard. And then so finally I'm like, something's off. Something's wrong. My mom's telling me the story that her and I can diet just like everyone else, but we won't lose the weight like anyone else because our metabolism is shot. So now all of a sudden that story's in my head. Is that true? I don't know. So I go to this doctor, get my thyroid checked. He looks at me and laughs and he goes, you're just vain. You need to work out more. You need to do this. And so I go out there ashamed, as opposed to saying, what's truly wrong with me? Getting the panels done. I mean, even now, if you look at my blood work, I've had functional medicine doctors. I've had other doctors. My blood work is fine, except for what it's showing about celiac. The biopsies show that it was patchy. My doctor says, I could have missed it. You probably have it. You definitely have an intolerance. So let's start looking at the foods. And that's a whole other podcast, a whole other story that we could talk about the foods in America versus Europe. I mean, totally banned substances. Like I know I could probably eat anything I want. If I go abroad here, I'm not going to be able to. So it's like, we believe these things and we put this power outside of us. And you're right. For years, I looked to psychics and tarot card readers. Tell me what's going to happen in my life. And I chalk that up to fear. But I'm loving the fact that you're saying it's power. And now that I'm taking my power back, I'm actually shopping this idea. Yes, you are totally right. With our breath is our life force. But we talk so much about the mind. Our mind can be so skewed. And what I've realized is in our line of work, mindset is like gold. Everyone talks about mindset. And I'm going to start to argue with that a little bit. Yes, mindset will get you only so far. But what about your heart set? Your heart has a mind of its own. Your heart has this memory. Like you said, your breath leaves you when you pass on, when you move on. You can be brain dead and still be alive. You can't be heart dead. Your heart stops. Your heart stops. Your heart stops and you stop breathing. I'm sorry, you're gone.
And as a HeartMath facilitator, they have like 30 years of research at the HeartMath Institute on this. And this is what I teach on in corporate. And this is what I teach people about getting connected with the heart. But when I talk about the mind, so let's make I'm not talking about the brain.
Yeah.
I'm talking about,
people are confused with this.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the mind of consciousness that creates everything, which includes the heart. Yes. So that's the difference when I speak about the mind. So that's why sometimes I always realize I have to make quite a distinction because it's your whole being of consciousness that's interpreting your reality. And that's kind of like translating everything into how you're making meaning. And so that's why it has to be, it's bigger than your brain. Right? It's bigger than that.
But people think it's like mind over matter. I could will myself through this. And that's not the reality of it. We need to take a minute and drop into our heart and feel, is this in alignment with me? Is this energetically matching where I am? Get that quiet to like allow our body to give us the knowledge that our body holds. I know you work with the human garage. You've done a lot of that fascia stuff. Like our body is holding on so much to things, and we just think it's all in the mind, and it's beyond that.
Well, wouldn't you if you were a body in with a spirit who didn't trust?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we are very like we are control freaks today, a lot of us.
Yes.
And we're living in the dominant energy of fear. And so when we're in control, we're in stress state. And when we're not trusting, remember that your body will just follow your mind from the bigger perspective, your mind and heart. It'll just follow that. Like you actually don't need to worry about the body if you take care of your consciousness and your awareness and your stories. And, it'll just figure itself out. It's like we need to work from a different angle, but we don't trust. And we don't trust ourselves first and foremost, right? That we can heal. We don't trust ourselves making decisions. We don't trust ourselves today and our opinions. We're afraid to speak our truth. We're afraid to do the things that we would love to do and really live our life to the fullest. And then if we don't trust ourselves, we can't trust each other. You can't trust each other if you fundamentally don't trust yourself. And then we don't trust the world we're in. Right. So there's this whole there's layer upon layer upon layer of mistrust. And we have to come back and we have to start listening. The number one thing that we're afraid to do today, and I do believe the mental health epidemic has a part to play in this as well, is we're afraid to feel.
Yes.
People are afraid to feel like anything. Like, do you really think in this mental health epidemic, and I look back on the journey I've been on, from 14 years of age, I was taught that my feelings, depression, anxiety, everything I was very depressed as a teenager. Like I was suicidal, pretty much my whole life, suicidal ideation from a very young girl. And so I really didn't want to be here. Like there were times in my life where I desperately did not want to be here and had so many different ways and plans to how I was going to do it and all of that. And overdosed twice. And, I have a long history. So when I talk, I don't talk at people, I talk through experience. And one of the things that I was terrified of is feeling, because I used to present to people that would say, you can't have these feelings. And if you can't get rid of them, well, then we're going to have to medicate them away. So what message is that sending to the collective? That your feelings are not valid, that you should feel guilty about having them, and that you need to get rid of them. And you should be happy. Like, what's wrong with you? You should be happy all the time. And it's like this toxic positivity. And I teach meditation and gratitude, and I teach people how to be. But what I'm going for, and what I have a lot of today is peace. That's different. I have peace. And some days I have peace in my heart, but I'm still having a very challenging day.
Yeah. I'm
still dealing with an awful lot of stuff that's coming up. I'm still not feeling great in myself. I might be tired. I might be a bit narky, but I still have a sense of peace. So this kind of toxic positivity and telling our kids, that they're heavily scheduled from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. and we think that that's normal. And then we're wondering why they have mental health issues because, when they're absolutely exhausted and burnt out as teenagers. And then, we wonder why they go into the world and they can't rest and relax, which is the foundation of energy management and good health, because we have taught them that to be of worth in this world, you have to be doing all the time.
Yes.
And you're in constant competition with people. So we're creating, human doings. We're not creating human beings. And, one of the things that I said to myself was the greatest gift I ever gave myself was the gift of allowing myself to feel. When you give yourself that gift, when you start to feel your way through life, yes, it can be very intense at times, but when you cut yourself off from feeling what we call the lower vibrational emotions, you also cut yourself off from feeling the joy and the happiness and the greatness that comes with that. You cannot have one without the other. And so when you're numbing yourself out in medication and you're feeling so much shame and guilt about feeling sad, instead of cutting off 50% of yourself, investigate, become curious. Why am I sad? What's going on in my life? Because I believe all the signs and symptoms that I have had my entire life that we call mental health signs and symptoms were a cry for help from my soul, saying, you're not on the right path. You're not listening to yourself. You're not around the right people. There's something wrong. There's abuse happening here that you're not, you're being gaslit into not being with. Like, I was in the fashion industry for 20 years. There were some horrific things that happened during that time. My mental health was a direct reflection of my life. And I was trying to numb that and medicate it instead of facing it. What? And then we wonder why it gets worse. Like now when I have anxiety that comes up, or I feel a day where I'm feeling sad or I feel depressed, I take time with myself to allow myself to feel. There's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions.
Yeah.
You might just be having a sad day, and I sit and I let it move through my body and I journal it and I become curious about where it is in my body and what is it trying to tell me. Your emotions are energy, they're energy in motion. They just want to be seen and heard and move through you. Now, the problem is when we identify with them. I am depressed. I am anxious, as opposed to I'm experiencing depression.
Yeah.
I am experiencing feelings of anxiety. It's not my identity. It's not who I am. But for 20 years, it was my identity.
Yes.
Like I was told that I was just depressed and anxious and I would have to be medicated for the rest of my life. And so I took that on as my identity. And I also was ashamed that that's who I was. So when I was drinking out, I was this fun, happy person. And so I could, in my world, I could pretend that I was this happy person, because I was like, a part of me was like so humiliated that I was this sad, depressed person.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't really want people to see that. So I would hide that part of me, like and you're doing this dance and pretending to be something you're not, instead of just allowing yourself to go, oh, I'm a human being. Oh, right. So I came here to feel every single emotion that there is. And so when somebody passes on and I feel grief, I realize that that's a sign of how much I love them, and that that's a real emotion that I allow to move through me, instead of a doctor coming along and just giving me a pill, oh, here, like you're grieving, let me numb that for you, thinking that it's going to go away. And I always say, we never bury our emotions deep enough, because they're going to come up in some other way. So you might have buried something when you were a teenager, and when you're in your 30s, you might have a physical dis-ease, right? That's manifesting as an autoimmune condition. We're not going to connect it back to what happened in our teenage years, because we don't do that, because we're not taught to do that. Yeah. Everything has a connection and a correlation. Absolutely everything. There is nothing that happens in this world without cause and effect. So if you're not feeling great today, maybe become curious about what's really going on inside of you. What part of you is looking for your attention? And could you actually start to love the parts of you that actually are quite ugly, or that you would rather not be with? Like maybe they're just as important as the parts of you that were, in the pageant contests, that people see the beauty aspect of you, the how you look in the dress. Maybe there's other parts of you too that are just as valid and would like to be welcomed into your life. And potentially when you do that, then, I always say feelings are like waves. And sometimes it's like a tsunami moves through us, but waves always come to shore. Always come to shore. And so even though your emotions can feel very big, they come to shore. I put a post on Instagram the other day, because I live in we all live in a world where I watch parents who didn't have anything when they were younger. And what I mean by that is they didn't have money. So they believed that they didn't have the opportunity, or my mom couldn't get me a car when I was 17 and I had to work 2 jobs and all of this stuff. And so we have a lot of parents who say, I'm going to give my kids everything I didn't have. I would like to say, okay, well, if you didn't have healthy emotional regulation, or parents who emotionally regulated, or you had a lot of trauma when you were young and you didn't feel safe in your environment, maybe we should reframe what we think about passing on to our kids what we didn't have. Maybe they don't need the new car. Maybe they don't need all the money. Maybe they don't need all the things. Maybe what they need is healthy emotional safety. Maybe they need to learn how to regulate their emotions and how to connect with people. And maybe they need to learn that it's okay to feel your way through this world, and that you don't have to be scheduled 5 days a week for 55 million hours, and then every weekend taken up with 20 different outside activities that you're doing. Maybe that's another conversation.
Well, I think what you're saying is healing. Like, we all have to be in a society that's willing and open to be healed. Healing in that way does not continue to make profit. So we are trading profits. And I'm not saying don't live in a capitalistic world. I think we should all have everything we want and be able to get it for the right reasons. But if we are truly looking at healing ourselves and healing the next generation, we are going to get people off medication. We are going to get people healthier. We are going to go back to nature and real foods. We are going to get rid of all these things that the powers that be, we all know that there's like this little boardroom of people that are making all the decisions for us. And it always comes back to money. We stay sick. We stay unhealed. Even, they're going to make the money. The money's not, we need to follow the money. And where that money is where the state of society is going to be. And the fact is, we can gaslight ourselves into thinking that we're doing all the healing work. Like, we've talked about this before, there's people out there that are spitting all this game about healing, and I do this and I do that and I do that. How many of those are actually living what they're saying? How many people are we taking advice from, going back even to the doctors, that are living what they're saying? Who was I talking to? I heard this conversation that this guy was like overweight, couldn't figure out how to lose the weight, was doing everything and was going to his doctor saying, it's just not working. It's just not working. What's wrong with me? And the doctor's like, well, you're not trying harder. You're sneaking the Snickers or this or that, whatever. Then he looked, his brain kicked in, his bigger consciousness kicked in and said, well, look at my doctor. He's fat too. Like, why are we taking these advice? Like, we hold gold, these things and these conversations from people that aren't actually living this.
You're bringing back memories of my childhood, where my doctor in Dublin that my mum used to take us to smoked, like while we were in the surgery with them. And I remember as a kid, it's really interesting because I hated the smoke, even though I ended up smoking myself. It's so interesting. But I remember going into his surgery and just listen to this. This is hilarious. This is why when I'm being told something is, and you need to do this, I'm like, let's go back in history, when all the evidence we have of how science got it real bloody wrong, right? And I remember, I had chronic asthma and I was always in hospital on nebulizers, getting oxygen and having massive, and my doctor smoked. You have to have a sense of humor about this, because back then that was completely, he would sit there lighting up cigarettes while we were in the room with them, and me going, maybe the smoke had something to do with it. It was, it's brilliant. Look back.
Think about when we were kids, when we would go to restaurants, there'd be the smoking and non-smoking section. Yeah. There was a half wall, open between the two. It's that smoke isn't going past, or even on a plane, the smoking or non-section, we're all.
But I've been saying for years since I got sober, and I've been saying that alcohol will be what cigarettes was. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're going to get there. And I firmly believe
it's the social aspect of it. How do we switch that though? Because people, I don't drink very much. I will on occasion have a glass of wine here and there. Very few. My husband doesn't drink, and it's still kind of this weird stigma, even though it should be celebrated.
I'll tell you when you see societal shifts. So when, in as little as 10 years since I got sober, when I got sober, there were people in Ireland that were out for me. It's how could you touch your sacred alcohol? Everybody cancelled me from work. I went through a horrific time. I went on the Late Late Show in Ireland for an interview, and on Monday, every single client I had rang me and cancelled me because I spoke about being in recovery and sober. That would never happen today, and that's a mere 10 years later. When I got sober, there was no such thing as a non-alcoholic drink. There was no such thing as a non-alcoholic wine. Now the non-alcoholic drinks market is worth 300 and something billion. And it's the fastest growing market.
Really?
Yes. So you have to look at the societal changes. The generation that's coming up now is also not as interested in alcohol as, say, my generation was when we were young. At 14, 15, we were drinking in Dublin all the time.
13,
all my friends' kids who were 14, 15, 16, none of them drink. So there is a shift in certain parts of society that you can see, and you see it on a world scale. But what's happening is our consciousness as human beings is shifting and changing. And a lot of us are waking up, and that's happening on a much bigger level. There's waves of awakening happening. And when your consciousness shifts and changes and your vibration raises, your energy shifts and changes, alcohol is a very low vibrational substance that causes depression. So I have a lot of clients that work with me that are like super curious, Courtney, right? Like they're like, you know, I have this and I drink, and I'm like, well, let's do some work together. And then what they find is they're like, you know what? I had a couple of glasses of wine last night, and I just didn't feel right. I didn't want to. And so it kind of becomes a mismatch to your vibration. You put it into your body, and it's doing more harm than good. It's like you had, like, I had a girl, one of my clients last week said, I had one glass of wine last night and I feel horrific today. And she's like, I almost feel like I had to do that because I feel so good now from showing up for myself, from doing the work. I feel so good that I really realized putting that one glass of wine in, how shitty it made me feel. But like, if you were to go back to when I had a lifestyle of being heavy medicated and partying all the time and inactive addiction and drinking, I didn't realize how crap I felt because my standard was so low, right? Like nobody knows how bad they're feeling until they start to feel good, because we've normalized feeling shit in this world. We just have. Like, I had normalized waking up feeling horrendous every day, like energy, like having all these health problems. Now, like the more I work on myself and the better I feel, I'm always amazed at when I get to the next level of my well-being, that I'm like, my God, there was another level. Like I feel so good. And I'm like, I never thought it was possible to feel this good, which shows you that I felt so bad. Like, oh, right. So most people you talk to today, and like, no, I feel grand. I feel good. But have we normalized a state of being that's actually not normal? Like when people say, I feel good, is that actually really, really, really crappy? But they have just become so used to feeling that way. When you have nothing to compare it to, because I didn't, I never really felt great. And remember that I started drinking at 15. So I also taught that, I was taught and inner taught by my behavior that to have fun, to feel good, I needed something outside of me. And I genuinely had this total cognitive dissonance with the fact that you could be healthy and happy and feel good without all of these substances. And so the longer I'm in recovery, the more I'm like, wow, this journey just gets better and better and better. It's like year on year, I feel even better than I did the year before. And so I'm like, wow, imagine I had just accepted that for myself, which I did for many decades. And I would have never been able to taste what's really available to us in this life. And that's why I do what I do, because I'm so deeply passionate about the fact that I believe everyone can get here. I do. I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't. Like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, God, I feel so crap. I'm like, you can absolutely turn the ship around. At any stage, I don't care where you are in your journey, but there are a few things that have got to be there. Your willingness to show up for yourself, your willingness to be consistent and put in the work, and a curiosity about yourself and the world, to be forgiving, to be compassionate with yourself, and to start to understand that there's a different way to be, do, and live this life. And to get there takes time. It doesn't happen at once, but it is the most worthwhile journey you will ever go on, is deciding to live differently.
Yeah. It is amazing once you start making those changes, how quickly you start to notice how you feel. Because, I really don't drink very much. If I do, it's a glass of wine here and there. And like you said, I don't feel good. I'm not happy about it. I wake up like I feel so much better. That's why my husband stopped drinking. He did 75 hard. Part of that challenge was not drinking for 75 days. He loved the way he felt so much that he never went back. He's 3 years sober because of that. Not because of an addiction problem. Now, him and I both drank too much. He didn't. I started drinking at 13. And then I realized you start to think about, okay, who am I around? What is the energy that's causing me to drink? Like you start to take inventory of what's going on in your life. I know when it got bad, it was always in social settings. I mean, you had the same thing. I know, like I didn't feel comfortable in myself. And so then I would have pull the drink so then I could be fun. And, you start to think about that. Even now, when I do choose to drink, I look at the scenario. What is the energy of the room? Why have I chosen to have that glass of wine? There's a reason, because I don't want that. I don't crave my nightly glass of wine. If we go back to even my health issues, finding out that I can't have gluten, all of a sudden my body feels so different. I would have never known because I was eating it my whole entire life. That was, like you said, that was my normal. I just felt that you had to have stomach issues after you ate things. You had to run to the bathroom. You had to, even with dairy. Now I'm understanding what dairy I can and can't have. And when you start to remove these things from your body that aren't in alignment with you, you really do start to know what affects you. Now, like the minute I eat something that doesn't sit well with me, like I know, like, okay,
Feel it. Yeah.
this is like, because I know what feeling good or feeling, I don't think I've been doing it long enough to feel good, but I feel better. I've been doing it long enough now to know that one little thing is going to push me over the edge. Okay, that's not good for me. It's not in alignment with me. It's not following suit. So it's really fascinating when you start to actually like slow down and realize what you're doing to yourself, how good you can feel, and how we are doing these things to take us out of that good feeling.
I know. And it makes me so sad sometimes, like for the old me that for years was struggling and, had just accepted my lot. Like, you're just going to be sad. You're just going to be this. This is who you are. But then the other side, when we flip it, is like, I also feel incredibly grateful that I'm only 46. Like, I'm so young. And I do say that, like, with sincerity. Some people go, you're so old. I'm like, I'm so young.
Yeah.
I'm so young. And I feel so blessed to have found, that there's another way to live. And I'm still very much a work in progress, very, very much a work in progress. Like now at 46, I realized through tracking my cycle that like all of the damage I've done to myself since my teenage years is going to require me to step up a little bit more and in a very different way at the moment. And I've been doing it like for the last couple of months, like really tracking and changing my food. And I will say that my last cycle, I had no symptoms. Even James said to me, Mom, you weren't really moody this month like that. Because like I said to him like a few months ago when it was getting really bad, I remember it was probably before the summer. And there was a lot of things. My mom passed away in January. So there's a lot of other things going on as well. So we always have to look at things from a full 360 perspective. Yeah. And I do remember like there were times where we'd come home from soccer and I'd be like, Mom has to go to bed like now. Like I'm going to bed. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, no, literally, I can't even make a cup of tea. Like, can you do this? And he's old enough, obviously, he's nearly 14, that he was, but I was like, but that I started to notice was a particular, just 2 days every month, the same 2 days. And so I started to do something different in the weeks leading up to it. And so it's been about 4 or 5 months now. And now that's gone completely.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's learning to work with your hormones and food. And it does take a lot of daily discipline. I'll be honest, like it really does, like tracking my cycle, writing in a journal, how I felt, the symptoms I had, am I bloated, what food I ate. But I can tell you it is so worth it because last month I was like, wow, I didn't have those 2 days of just going, vroom.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like being normal, deep dive into despair. And like, I said to my sister, it's like, I'm selling my house. I'm doing, and she's like, just wait 2 days and then come back. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was my hormones. Like it's a thing. It's
wow.
A bit of a talk about because you do see women like at this age who don't understand the connection between the hormones and the moods and the fluctuations in energy and all of that, and do start making crazy ass decisions and not understanding why. And so now I have a little chat with myself and I'm like, that this happens every month. It's a couple of days. Just move through it, treat yourself well, go and have a rest. And then we're going to work a little bit better on it next month. And just being kind to myself has made all the difference. So if you're a woman out there and you're struggling, I highly recommend making your hormones happy by really understanding where you are in your life with this, like what your history is with your cycle. Like, we are cyclical beings as women. It's something we can't get away from. And when we ignore it, we can use as many pills and potions and all sorts of things that we want, but you're only just masking the symptoms. That's it. And nobody knows you, and nobody can get to know you like you can. Like, you can sit in front of any doctor you want for 5 minutes here and there, but nobody's going to track your cycle and get to know your moods and help you understand yourself like you will. Nobody can do that for you. I don't care how much you're paying them, by the way. It's just, you have to at some stage go, okay, I have to take full responsibility here for this.
Yeah. Are you doing this in your journal?
I'm doing it in my journal. I've been doing it in my journal since last year, actually. And it takes a while.
But this is the journal that everyone can get, right? The one you've created.
So you can go on. Oh no, so there's a girl in Ireland actually that does particular journals for your different phases, spring, summer, autumn, winter. And it's done more from a Celtic perspective, which is amazing. But then MyFlow app here actually does a really good job of it. And there's a free version like on MyFlow, Elisa Vitti, and she has a book out that everybody can get. I just feel she has done it better than most people that I've read and heard about. Okay. So if you really just want to go on MyFlow app, put in your details and start inputting your data every day, and then that'll store it for you. I'm a big fan of writing. So, I have my own journal, Change Your Day the 5-Minute Way. And if you want to start working with your energy, that is the best journal. It took me years to create a very simple journal. Everyone's like, this took years to create. And I'm like, yeah, because in the morning you've gratitude, intention, and action. But in the evening, you have what's called a releasing and repatterning of energy. So most people carry everything with them unconsciously, because most of the stuff that's happening is unconscious. So with my journal, you're in the evening, it only takes 5 minutes. What didn't go well today? What can I learn from this? I am letting go of. And then you move into something that made me smile, I am proud of. And then there's the more positive questions, but you're still doing that self-reflection practice, letting go of what no longer serves you, and then shifting to what did go well. And so you're imprinting that into your energetic field, but you're also learning each day from and bringing more awareness to what is actually going on. Most people just go through their day, go to sleep, wake up, start again. And then they don't understand why they're repeating cycles and looping and all of that stuff. So the energy you go to sleep in is the energy you wake up in. So my last question in the journal is, tomorrow I look forward to. And then when you wake up the next day, you start with 3 things you're grateful for again. So it's retraining your brain to see things from a different perspective.
So much happens in our sleep. That's when our hard drive goes to work and does all this. Right. So if you're setting yourself up in that mind frame, that mindset, when you go to sleep, it's going to change everything. But besides your journal, because I know how good, I'm right there with you. Journaling is huge. It changes your life. Yeah. Aside from your journal, you have your membership. You have so many different ways to work with you. I know in your membership, you offer so many great things. You do your breath work, you bring in speakers, you take people through challenges. How else can we work with you? Where can we do that? And how do we join you in this, just shift? Yeah.
Everything's on my website. I work with people one-to-one in coaching. I teach a 90-day dream builder program, but my membership is where you're going to get insane value. So it's only $33 a month for that. There's over 50 hours of recorded content, from a meditation library to about 10 or 15 different mindset workshops, and everything from your word is your wand to how to create a vision, letter writing to yourself for the next year. And then I do meditation in my live meditation class every Monday. I bring in a guest teacher every month. We do group coaching. I do a 2-hour deep transformation breathwork journey. I always say there's an awful lot in my membership. So some people just do the meditation class every Monday. Some people just do the group coaching every month. There's a few of my members that do absolutely everything. So there's so much in my membership. So you can there's a courses section where everything is recorded. And then you have a communities app in Kajabi where it's like a Facebook feed, and we have challenges and we have our interactions. And then my one-to-one, and I do corporate work as well. So a lot of my work is speaking in corporates. And going in and teaching about energy management and helping people. And my mantra for business is, if you take care of people, business takes care of itself. Because we can teach as many processes and frameworks as we like in companies, but if people aren't doing the work in themselves, it doesn't make any difference. The change has to come from within, and it's really time that we understand that. That real change has to come from within.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people are, disappointed and disorientated and disconnected, is because they're not doing the work on themselves. They're working from the outside in, and they're trying to make other people happy, or, trying to fit in with a team at work and trying to make them see things their way. Like, if you change from the inside out, your world will start mirroring back to you those changes. And so that's really the core focus of all my work across everything that I do, is understanding it's an inside out world.
And when you become aware of that, wow, it's mind blowing.
Yes.
I mean, you just attract just the people, the feeling of who you attract into your life just happens, just like how we came together. And I can speak from experience. Your membership is wonderful. I've done breath work with you. It's life-changing. It was a great session when I did it. I've trained in breath work too. And it was like, it's just that release is just so transformative. It is so good. So I suggest everyone check out your membership, check out your journal, and follow along with you. Thank you, Ali, today for joining me again, sharing a conversation that we have with everyone else. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I love you so much.
Bye.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Alison Canavan, for the great conversation we often have offline, but today I get to share it with you. If you want to work with Ali, join her membership, get her journal, or even just do one-on-one work, I'll put all that information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find our books, our courses, and everything else we have coming out soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye.